I brought this topic of today, which is integrating sociocracy into a political mandate. So I know that Jerry has not to write on the chat, but I love it. I'm not going to be seeing it now, but I'd like to know how you guys are arriving here. What are the expectations you have when you were brought or when you were called out for this topic? And also if you have any other examples of sociocracy being applied into a political mandate. Okay, while you do that, I can introduce myself.
You know, the word political mandate, at least for me in the US culture, we don't know that word mandate.
Mandate is well, it's a group, it's a mandate. It's like a period of time that you act as a politician. Does it make sense? When I talk about mandate, I talk about the time frame.
Oh, like being elected to a term of office to serve?
Yes, term of office. That's a new term. And you're gonna see lots of weird definitions that I find that I'm not an English speaker. I'm a Brazilian, so excuse my language, but ask me any questions that you don't understand. All right, so Jerry has already introduced a little bit of me, and this is like the photo we took together doing this tour that we made in Brazil. And so to my right on this photo, there is Ted and Jerry. And to the left, there is Ruth, Nara, Tanya, and I. And the four of us decided to bring SALT to Brazil. And we are now going to the 6th edition of the Sociocracy of Leadership Training. And today, only Nara, Tanya, and I are doing it, but it's been very successfully. And when we brought out this methodology, we also tropicalized it. So you're gonna see that the words that we're gonna use in this presentation, it might differ from the classical sociocracy a little bit. So just before we enter in this political, what do you call that again, Jerry? I might write it down so I don't say mandate. You are muted.
Term of office.
Term
of office. You know, people are generally elected for 2 years or 4 years or whatever.
Yes, it's 4 years here.
And
so before
to serve in which body? In the federal government or the state government or city?
Yeah, maybe it's a body, it's a collective body that I'm more referring to, like this group of people that go and become candidates and politicians together. So before going into that, like myself and my friends, when we talk about politics, especially here in Brazil, like there are so many things that come into our minds, and we realize that politics is equal to corruption, manipulation, overpower. So it brings like a negative connotation into politics. And so I decided to go into the dictionary to find out what the word really meant. And I realized that, of course, besides being a candidate or a professional that works with politics, it says, politician is a person who acts in a manipulative way, typically to gain advancement within an organization. And I said, wow, is it really what I want to go into? Or is there any other way of changing this mindset and this stagnated belief that we have when we talk about politics or politicians? So the invitation today is for us to open up our minds and actually think about what are the innovations that politics could bring, and what are the new roles of the politicians in this turn of office, in this moment, in this collective way. Yeah. So as everything in sociocracy, it all starts with attention. But like, what's attention? So the tension, as we know of it, is a gap between the current reality and the desired reality. And if we look at the organizations as living organisms and not attached to machines that, you know, like we have this command and control situation. So if our organizations are living organisms, we are these nerve endings of these living organisms that are our organizations. So everything and every tension starts from an individual. But what is then attention? It's a personal experience. It's a gap between the situation you are present at and your expectation or your preference. It's something that you feel, you really feel, you sense it in your body within an organization. And these are challenges and opportunities for an organization that are brought by its members. And what happens if we don't look after the tension, if the tension is not taken care of? You know, like if we don't give attention to the stimulus, to what brought us to feel this tension, we accumulate conflicts. We don't hear opinions from our comrades, and we miss lots of opportunities. But when we cross this threshold, when we see and we give importance to this tension, we feel the stimulus and we say, this is relevant to my organization, is when I can act upon it. And it's when I respond. And the way I give responses are through actions, are through agreements, and it could also be possible to establish a role or even to form a circle to look after this tension. And also we need to have a feedback in order for the cycle to be complete, because through the feedback is when I can evaluate this process and better it in the near future. So tensions bring movement, tensions bring life. Without tension, there is no self-management. So Larissa Galantini felt this tension and she decided to share it with us. And her tension was the following. The Brazilian political scenario tends to disregard the local political context, and the most affected by this is always the environment. Over the past 3.5 years, we have put in place a unique model of collective mandate or collective turn of office in Brazil, with a shared deliberation system and with a focus on straightening local politics. In addition, not to wanting to lose the only environmentalist chair in the municipality, we would like to see the continuity of this work through a new composition. So when Larissa shared her tension, it made sense, and I was immediately called out for that, but it made sense where it was coming from. She put a context in there. You know, they said, we are unique with this format in Brazil. And we don't want to lose this opportunity of continuity, but also we don't want to carry on in the next mandate. So we need to help people to get together into a new composition. So that's us receiving Larissa's call. So I was basically touched by it, and I knew Murilo, who is on my left. And I talked to him about it. He felt very excited. And then I met Cristiane, who is just below Murilo, in a coffee shop. And that was before COVID-19. And I told her about Larissa's tension, and she was caught by it as well. And then we were introduced by Yanni, who is just below me on the right. And then I felt the tension. And I said, my action will be to call on a meeting. Let's see what we think, and let's see what we can, how we can carry on from that. So that was my tension, and my response to that tension was to call on a meeting, virtual meeting, because each of us live in a different place. So I decided then to put my tension, to articulate my tension. And when we articulate our tensions, we call it a driver. And a driver is a sentence that includes context and needs. So I put the following tension into this driver. We are integrating as a group and getting to know our political points of view. It is necessary to understand the tensions and dreams of each one when we recognize ourselves as a collective turn of office. So lots of brainstorm came that day. You know, we talked about time, about trust, about taking care when we speak, you know, being careful with our words, about bringing society closer to decision making. So we had like some questions that were answered in that meeting. And when we asked like what the collective turnover need in order for me to jump into this new composition with my eyes closed, and what it can't have that if it did, I would stop participating immediately. What are our political motivations? What would I defend with my body, heart, and soul? And what's the role of the Santinho? And that goes like some cultural background for you guys. Here in Brazil, we have a big Catholic community. And in the past, you know, the candidates would just print out some flyers, and on the front of the flyer would be the face of the person, the face of the candidate, their names and their number. And on the back, it would be like a little cent, the picture of a cent. And that was a strategy that it was used, that in that way, if people threw that flyer out, it would be like a kind of a sin to throw a cent away. So in that way, the people would be carrying that flyer and will be with the memory of the candidate in mind. And during the vote period, they wouldn't have many options, or they wouldn't be that interested in politics, and would just, you know, take the cent with them, the little cent flyer, and vote in the number that it was shown. So we just nickname it to see, okay, so what's the role of this representative, you know, the candidate that will be representing this collective, and this group. And are we going to join a party? So when we started answering these questions, we realized that we were creating a sense of belonging, that basically by answering these questions, we were creating our vision and our values. And the vision was straightforward. We want to protect the water, we want to protect the land, we want to care for each other, you know, like food sovereignty, fair sharing. We want to use culture as a language to talk to people, and we want to have a regenerative city. And our values were transparency, equivalence, efficiency, dynamic structure, finding unity within diversity. So I was having lots of tensions when we were creating this sense of belonging together. I said, this vision is pretty much what permaculture offers right now. And these values are the core principles of sociocracy. So I said, how can I bring this tension to this group, but already in a structured way? So here I come with one more driver. To date, the 73 collective or shared candidates for councillor in Brazil have elected so far 19 initiatives in city councils, none of them with a focus on permaculture. It is necessary to position ourselves politically. So we had lots of ideas that moment, but I came already with a proposal that from now on, we recognize ourselves as a turn on office, no, collective permaculture. Say that, Jared.
Can we maybe see if we can clarify that for me? So I think what I may be understanding is that you are in an election process, you are trying to get somebody elected. And that person is actually a representative of a collective.
Yes, that's exactly
it. So that's what you mean by the collective mandate. It's a group of people for whom one of those people is taking a turn at being elected.
Exactly. In Brazilian politics nowadays, you have just one representative, and that's the one candidate that you vote. But like since 1999, we have the first attempt to create a collective group of people or a collective mandate. It would be like maybe the representative would have a group of social civil people that would be participating on the decision making of this representative. But that was the first time in Brazil that, you know, like officially there were 5 co-candidates working together, and they were elected. So it's not the representative that was elected, the candidate itself, but the group of people were elected as one. And within this group of people, they had one representative that was the official name into the council hall, into the city hall. Okay. So can I call it back collective permacultural mandate? And you know what I'm talking about
okay,
now?
now that's better.
Oof. Okay. Thanks for the clarifying question. So then that was my proposal. Having felt that tension, you know, I had already prepared a proposal to me. Let's go straight for it. You know, like that from now on, recognize ourselves as a group of people that takes decisions together, but we have a point of view in common, which is the permaculture. So we went through the whole process of decision making, and many questions came out, and we were answering these questions, and then brief considerations were made, and then the considerations that were made was like, wow, superb, you know, like very innovative, audacious, it's a new way of doing politics. There is some truth in this time of uncertainty, and, you know, like we felt our hearts overflowing with joy. And that was beautiful. We knew that, you know, like from that moment, we have a decision more or less made, but we had to check if there were any objections. And we did a round on objections. Nobody pointed an objection, but there was a concern, and we didn't want to ignore this concern. It was not an objection. We celebrated. We had our first decision making process done. That was the first decision we made together. But the concern was the fact that it could create a limitation of understanding about permaculture within the electors, the voters. And then we said, wow, that's true, you know, like, so we are prioritizing those who know what a permaculture is, but what will happen with those who don't? But wait a minute, that's our political view. So that's the main part of, you know, like our recognition of being together. So what do we do? So we had to bring some attention to these concerns. And one of them was to adapt the methodology into a simple language for everybody to understand. And by adapting art and culture into the process, we would bring the voters closer to us, and our initial focus was going to be about the ethical principles of permaculture, which are universal principles: caring for the earth, caring for people, and fair sharing. So then we created the Mandato Coletivo Permacultural. That's the name of it in Portuguese. And we had our logo, we have our name, we created our social media. And from that moment on, lots of decision making was taken together. And we were already using a consent decision making process. We had to decide on the logo, you know, like how to share financial resources with collaborators. And we wanted to apply the fair share, the one of the 3 main principles, ethical principles of permaculture. So how we can live what we are doing by the time we are doing it. So deciding on new criteria for members to enter, how our pre-campaign methodologies and strategies would be, when our first live would happen. And then we had to start using all the patterns, you know, proposal forming, role selection, evaluation, and then more tensions were coming. And then, you know, like if we are doing and are working with self-management, we need to have certain meta agreements and patterns. And the meta agreement is that we have to have a minimum structure required for self-management to work. And within patterns, they are structures that support the principles, and they can be applied on demand and according to the organization needs. So instead of starting saying that we were a group of people doing sociocracy, you know, like one of the decisions that we made also was the role selections, and I've been selected for this time being as the facilitator of this group. So I know sociocracy, and I started implementing it without saying what we were doing, but letting people have a taste of it. So when I felt that we were ready for that, I said, okay, so how we can implement then sociocracy officially into this group? And by doing that, we had to ask the question, what's self-management? And self-management, it is indeed ideologic. It is a way to diminish the role of the boss. It is the distribution of authority. It is the clarity about expectations and responsibilities. It's a quick feedback to make adjustments. And we listen to those involved. As Ted and Jerry like to say, every voice matters. But what is not a self-management? Because if we don't address what is not, we create anti-patterns that jeopardize the implementation of a self-management process. So self-management is not a horizontal management. It's not a place that everyone makes decisions together. It's not a consensus amongst all involved. I don't decide everything about myself at work. It's not the absence of structure, and it's for sure not a conflict-free zone. So for a group that like us that was implementing sociocracy from scratch, we had like some advantages into this process because we are more engaged in and willing to learn together. And we are born self-management. We don't have, you know, like traumas or old memories impeding us from trying this new methodology or this new way of managing ourselves together. So there is no previous references. The culture is being created at the same time as the structure. And then another tension turned into a driver. So we are using sociocracy as a model for our collective permacultural mandate, management and governance. But so far we have not agreed to the decision. We need to understand whether this management model makes sense to us and consent to the decision to become official. So we went through the whole process of questions and brief considerations and objections and no concerns this time. And we understood that by integrating sociocracy into a political mandate, we will serve as an example for other politicians to get inspired with this way of management. And that was said by Henny Souza, who is our younger member of this group.